Another puzzle of our solar system, the phenomenon of the comets. Tiny globes of matter, they are often referred to as the solar system's rebellious members, for they appear to obey none of the normal rules of the road. The orbits of the planets around the Sun are, with the exception of Pluto, almost circular. The orbits of the comets are elongated, and in most instances, very much so, to the extent that some of them disappear from our view for hundreds or thousands of years. The planets, with the exception of Pluto, orbit the Sun in the same general plane. The comets' orbits lie in many diverse planes. Most significant, while all the planets known to us circle the Sun in the same counterclockwise direction, many comets move in the reverse direction. Astronomers are unable to say what force, what event, created the comets and threw them into their unusual orbits. Our answer? Marduk. Sweeping in the reverse direction in an orbital plane of his own, he shattered, broke the host of Tiamat into smaller comets, and affected them by his gravitational pull, his so-called net. Thrown into the net, they found themselves ensnared. The whole band of demons that had marched on her side he cast into fetters. Their hands he bound. Tightly encircled, they could not escape. After the battle was over, Marduk took away from Kingu the Tablet of Destinies, Kingu's independent orbit, and attached it to his own, Marduk's breast. His course was bent into permanent solar orbit. From that time on, Marduk was bound always to return to the scene of the celestial battle. Having vanquished Tiamat, Marduk sailed on in the heavens, out into space, around the Sun, and back to retrace his passage by the outer planets. Ea, Neptune, whose desire Marduk achieved; Anshar, Saturn, whose triumph Marduk established. Then his new orbital path returned Marduk to the scene of his triumph, to strengthen his hold on the vanquished gods, Tiamat and Kingu. As the curtain is about to rise on Act 5, it will be here, and only here, though this has not hitherto been realized, that the biblical tale of Genesis joins the Mesopotamian epic of creation. For it is only at this point that the tale of the creation of earth and heaven really began. Completing his first ever orbit around the Sun, Marduk then returned to Tiamat, whom he had subdued. The Lord paused to view her lifeless body, to divide the monster he then artfully planned. Then, as a muscle, he split her into two parts. Marduk himself now hit the defeated planet, splitting Tiamat in two, severing her skull, or upper part. Then another of Marduk's satellites, the one called North Wind, crashed into the separated half. The heavy blow carried this part, destined to become Earth, to an orbit where no planet had been orbiting before. The Lord trod upon Tiamat's hinder part. With his weapon, the connected skull, he cut loose. He severed the channels of her blood, and caused the north wind to bear it to places that have been unknown. Earth had been created. The lower part had another fate. On the second orbit, Marduk himself hit it, smashing it to pieces. The other half of her he set up as a screen for the skies, locking them together. As watchman, he stationed them. He bent Tiamat's tail to form the great band as a bracelet. The pieces of this broken half were hammered to become a bracelet in the heavens. Acting as a screen between the inner planets and the outer planets, they were stretched out into a great band. The asteroid belt had been created. Astronomers and physicists recognized the existence of great differences between the inner, or terrestrial planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth and its moon, and Mars, and the outer planets, Jupiter and beyond. Two groups separated by the asteroid belt. We now find, in the Sumerian epic, ancient recognition of these phenomena. Moreover, we are offered, for the first time, a coherent cosmogonic scientific explanation of the celestial events that led to the disappearance of the missing planet, and the resultant creation of the asteroid belt, plus the comets, and of Earth. After several of his satellites and his electric bolts split Tiamat in two, Another satellite of Marduk shunted her upper half to a new orbit as our planet Earth. Then Marduk, on his second orbit, smashed the lower half to pieces and stretched them in a great celestial band. Every puzzle that we have mentioned is answered by the epic of creation, as we have deciphered it. Moreover, we also have the answer to question of why Earth's continents are concentrated on one side of it, and a deep cavity, the Pacific Ocean's bed, exists on the opposite side. The constant reference to the waters of Tiamat is also illuminating. She was called the watery monster, and it stands to reason that Earth, as part of Tiamat, was equally endowed with these waters. Indeed, some modern scholars describe Earth as planet Ocean, for it is the only one of the solar system's known planets that is blessed with such life-giving waters. New as these cosmologic theories may sound, they were accepted fact to the prophets and sages whose words fill the Old Testament. The prophet Isaiah recalled the primeval days, when the might of the Lord carved the haughty one, made spin the watery monster, dried up the waters of Tehom Rabbah. Calling the Lord Yahweh, my primeval king, the psalmist rendered in a few verses the cosmogony of the epic of creation. By thy might the waters thou didst disperse, the leader of the watery monsters thou didst break up. Job recalled how this celestial Lord also smote the assistants of the haughty one, and with impressive astronomical sophistication exalted the Lord, who, the hammered canopy stretched out in the place of Tehom, the earth suspended in the void, his powers the waters did arrest, his energy the haughty one did cleave, his wind the hammered bracelet measured out, his hand the twisting dragon did extinguish. Biblical scholars now recognize that the Hebrew Tehom, watery deep, stems from Tiamat, that Tehom Rabbah means great Tiamat, and that the biblical understanding of primeval events is based upon the Sumerian cosmologic epics. It should also be clear that first and foremost among these parallels are the opening verses of the book of Genesis, describing how the wind of the Lord hovered over the waters of Tehom, and how the lightning of the Lord, Marduk in the Babylonian version, lit the darkness of space as it hit and split Tiamat, creating Earth, and the Rakia, literally the hammered bracelet. This celestial band, hitherto translated as firmament, is called the heaven. The book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 8, explicitly states that it is this hammered-out bracelet that the Lord had named heaven, Shamaim. The Akkadian texts also called this celestial zone the hammered bracelet, Rakis, and describe how Marduk stretched out Tiamat's lower part until he brought it end to end, fastened into a permanent great circle. The Sumerian sources leave no doubt that the specific heaven, as distinct from the general concept of heavens and space, was the asteroid belt. Our Earth and the asteroid belt are the heaven and earth of both Mesopotamian and biblical references, created when Tiamat was dismembered by the celestial Lord. After Marduk's north wind had pushed Earth to its new celestial location, Earth obtained its own orbit around the sun, resulting in our seasons, and received its axial spin, giving us day and night. The Mesopotamian texts claim that one of Marduk's tasks after he created Earth was indeed to have allotted to Earth the days of the sun and established the precincts of day and night. The biblical concepts are identical. And God said, "Let there be lights in the hammered heaven to divide between the day and the night, and let them be celestial signs, and for seasons and for days and for years." Modern scholars believe that after Earth became a planet, it was a hot ball of belching volcanoes, filling the skies with mists and clouds. As temperatures began to cool, the vapors turned to water, separating the face of Earth into dry land and oceans. The fifth tablet of Enuma Elish, though badly mutilated, imparts exactly the same scientific information. Describing the gushing lava as Tiamat's spittle, The creation epic correctly places this phenomenon before the formation of the atmosphere, the oceans of Earth, and the continents. After the cloud waters were gathered, the oceans began to form, and the foundations of Earth, its continents, were raised. As the making of cold, a cooling off, took place, rain and mist appeared. Meanwhile the spittle continued to pour forth, laying in layers, shaping Earth's topography. Once again the biblical parallel is clear. And God said, "Let the waters under the skies be gathered together unto one place, and let dry land appear." And it was so. Earth, with oceans, continents, and an atmosphere, was now ready for the formation of mountains, rivers, springs, valleys. Attributing all creation to the Lord Marduk, Enuma Elish continued the narration. Putting Tiamat's head, Earth, into position, he raised the mountains thereon. He opened springs, the torrents to draw off. Through her eyes he released the Tigris and Euphrates. From her teats he formed the lofty mountains, drilled springs for wells, the water to carry off. In perfect accord with modern findings, both the Book of Genesis and Enuma Elish, and other related Mesopotamian texts, place the beginning of life upon earth in the waters, followed by the living creatures that swarm and fowl that fly. Not until then did living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts, appear upon earth, culminating with the appearance of man, the final act of creation. As part of the new celestial order upon earth, Marduk made the divine moon appear, designated him to mark the night, define the days every month. Who was this celestial god? The text calls him Sheshki, celestial god who protects earth. There is no mention earlier in the epic of a planet by this name, yet here he is, within her heavenly pressure, gravitational field. And who is meant by her? Tiamat or Earth? The roles of and references to Tiamat and Earth appear to be interchangeable. Earth is Tiamat reincarnated. The moon is called Earth's protector. That is exactly what Tiamat called Kingu, her chief satellite. The creation epic specifically excludes Kingu from the host of Tiamat that were shattered and scattered and put into reverse motion around the sun as comets. After Marduk completed his own first orbit and returned to the scene of the battle, he decreed Kingu's separate fate. And Kingu, who had become chief among them, he made shrink. As god Dugai, he counted him. He took from him the tablet of destinies, not rightfully his. Marduk then did not destroy Kingu. He punished him by taking away his independent orbit, which Tiamat had granted him as he grew in size. Shrunk to a smaller size, Kingu remained a god, a planetary member of our solar system. Without an orbit, he could only become a satellite again. As Tiamat's upper part was thrown into a new orbit, as the new planet Earth, we suggest Kingu was pulled along. Our moon, we suggest, is Kingu, Tiamat's former satellite. Transformed into a celestial Dugay, Kingu had been stripped of his vital elements, atmosphere, waters, radioactive matter. He shrank in size and became a mass of lifeless clay. These Sumerian terms fittingly describe our lifeless moon, its recently discovered history, and the fate that befell this satellite that started out as Kingu, great emissary, and ended up as Doggai, pot of lead. L.W. King reported the existence of 3 fragments of an astronomical mythological tablet that presented another version of Marduk's battle with Tiamat, which included verses that dealt with the manner in which Marduk dispatched Kingu. Kingu, her spouse, with a weapon not of war he cut away. The tablets of destiny from Kingu he took in his hand. A further attempt by B. Landisberger to edit and fully translate the text demonstrated the interchangeability of the names Kingu, Ensu, Moon. Such texts not only confirm our conclusion that Tiamat's main satellite became our moon, they also explain NASA's findings regarding a huge collision when celestial bodies the size of large cities came crashing into the moon. Both the NASA findings and the text discovered by L.W. King describe the moon as the planet that was laid waste. Cylinder seals have been found that depict the celestial battle, showing Marduk fighting a fierce female deity. One such depiction shows Marduk shooting his lightning at Tiamat, with Kingu clearly identified as the moon, trying to protect Tiamat, his creator. This pictorial evidence that Earth's moon and Kingu were the same satellite is further enhanced by the etymological fact that the name of the god Sin, in later times associated with the moon, derived from Suen, Lord of Wasteland. Having disposed of Tiamat and Kingu, Marduk once again crossed the heavens and surveyed the regions. This time his attention was focused on the dwelling of Nudimmud, Neptune, to fix a final destiny for Gaga, the erstwhile satellite of Anshar, Saturn, who was made an emissary to the other planets. The epic informs us that, as one of his final acts in the heavens, Marduk assigned this celestial god to a hidden place, a hitherto unknown orbit facing the deep, outer space, and entrusted him the counselorship of the watery deep. In line with his new position, the planet was renamed Usmi, one who shows the way, the outermost planet, our Pluto. According to the creation epic, Marduk had at one point boasted, "The ways of the celestial gods I will artfully alter, into two groups shall they be divided." Indeed he did. He eliminated from the heavens the sun's first partner in creation, Tiamat. He brought Earth into being, thrusting it into a new orbit nearer the sun. He hammered a bracelet in the heavens, the asteroid belt that does separate the group of inner planets from the group of outer planets. He turned most of Tiamat's satellites into comets. Her chief satellite, Kingu, he put into orbit around Earth to become the moon. And he shifted a satellite of Saturn, Gaga, to become the planet Pluto, imparting to it some of Marduk's own orbital characteristics, such as a different orbital plane. The puzzles of our solar system, the oceanic cavities upon Earth, the devastation upon the moon, the reverse orbits of the comets, the enigmatic phenomena of Pluto, all are perfectly answered by the Mesopotamian creation epic, as deciphered by us. Having thus constructed the stations for the planets, Marduk took for himself Station Nibiru, and crossed the heavens and surveyed the new solar system. It was now made up of 12 celestial bodies, with 12 great gods as their counterparts. Studies of the epic of creation and parallel texts show that sometime after 2000 BC, Marduk, son of Enki, was the successful winner of a contest with Ninurta, son of Enlil, for supremacy among the gods. The Babylonians then revised the original Sumerian epic of creation, expunged from it all references to Ninurta and most references to Enlil, and renamed the invading planet Marduk. The actual elevation of Marduk to the status of king of the gods upon earth was thus accompanied by assigning to him, as his celestial counterpart, the planet of the Nephilim, the 12th planet. As lord of the celestial gods, the planets, Marduk was thus also king of the heavens. Some scholars at first believed that Marduk was either the North Star or some other bright star seen in the Mesopotamian skies at the time of the spring equinox, because the celestial Marduk was described as a bright heavenly body. But Albert Schott and others have shown conclusively that all the ancient astronomical texts spoke of Marduk as a member of the solar system. Since other epithets described Marduk as the great heavenly body and the one who illumines, the theory was advanced that Marduk was a Babylonian sun god, parallel to the Egyptian god Ra, whom the scholars also considered a sun god. Texts describing Marduk as he who scans the heights of the distant heavens, wearing a halo whose brilliance is awe-inspiring, appeared to support this theory. But the same text continued to say that he surveys the lands like Shamash, the sun. If Marduk was in some respects akin to the sun, he could not, of course, be the sun. If Marduk was not the sun, which of the planets was he? The ancient astronomical texts failed to fit any one planet, basing their theories on certain epithets, such as son of the sun. Some scholars pointed at Saturn. The description of Marduk as a reddish planet made Mars, too, a candidate. But the texts placed Marduk in Marcus Shame, in the center of heaven. And this convinced most scholars that the proper identification should be Jupiter, which is located in the center of the line of planets. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. This theory suffers from a contradiction. The same scholars who put it forward were the ones who held the view that the Chaldeans were unaware of the planets beyond Saturn. These scholars list Earth as a planet, while contending that the Chaldeans thought of Earth as a flat center of the planetary system. And they omit the moon, which the Mesopotamians most definitely counted among the celestial gods. The equating of the 12th planet with Jupiter simply does not work out. The Epic of Creation clearly states that Marduk was an invader from outside the solar system, passing by the outer planets, including Saturn and Jupiter, before colliding with Tiamat. The Sumerians called the planet Nibiru, the planet of crossing, and the Babylonian version of the epic retained the following astronomical information. Planet Nibiru, the crossroads of heaven and earth he shall occupy. Above and below they shall not go across. They must await him. Planet Nibiru, planet which is brilliant in the heavens, he holds the central position. To him they shall pay homage. Planet Nibiru, it is he who without tiring the midst of Tiamat keeps crossing. Let crossing be his name, the one who occupies the midst. These lines provide the additional and conclusive information that in dividing the other planets into two equal groups, the 12th planet, in the midst of Tiamat, keeps crossing. Its orbit takes it again and again to the site of the celestial battle, where Tiamat used to be. We find that astronomical texts that deal in a highly sophisticated manner with the planetary periods, as well as lists of planets in their celestial order, also suggested that Marduk appeared somewhere between Jupiter and Mars. Since the Sumerians did know of all the planets, the appearance of the 12th planet in the central position confirms our conclusion. Mercury, Venus, Moon, Earth, Mars, Marduk, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. If Marduk's orbit takes it to where Tiamat once was, relatively near us, between Mars and Jupiter, why have we not yet seen this planet, which is supposedly large and bright? The Mesopotamian texts spoke of Marduk as reaching unknown regions of the skies and the far reaches of the universe. He scans the hidden knowledge. He sees all the quarters of the universe. He was described as the monitor of all the planets, one whose orbit enables him to encircle all the others. He keeps hold on their bands, orbits, makes a hoop around them. His orbit was loftier and grander than that of any other planet. It thus occurred to Franz Kugler that Marduk was a fast-moving celestial body, orbiting in a great elliptical path just like a comet. Such an elliptical path, focused on the sun as a center of gravity, has an apogee, the point farthest from the sun where the return flight begins, and a perigee, the point nearest the sun where the return to outer space begins. We find that two such bases are indeed associated with Marduk in the Mesopotamian texts. The Sumerian texts describe the planet as going from An-Ur, heaven's base, to Inun, lordly abode. The creation epic said of Marduk, he crossed the heaven and surveyed the regions. The structure of the deep the Lord then measured. Ishara he established as his outstanding abode. Ishara as a great abode in the heaven he established. One abode was thus outstanding, far in the deep regions of space. The other was established in the heaven, within the asteroid belt, between Mars and Jupiter. Following the teachings of their Sumerian forefather, Abraham of Ur, the ancient Hebrews also associated their supreme deity with the supreme planet. Like the Mesopotamian texts, many books of the Old Testament describe the Lord as having his abode in the heights of heaven, where he beheld the foremost planets as they were arisen, a celestial Lord who, unseen, in the heavens moves about in a circle. The book of Job, having described the celestial collision, contains these significant verses telling us where the lordly planet had gone. Upon the deep he marked out an orbit, where light and darkness merge, is his farthest limit. No less explicitly, the Psalms outlined the planet's majestic course. The heavens bespeak the glory of the Lord. The hammered bracelet proclaims his handiwork. He comes forth as a groom from the canopy. Like an athlete, he rejoices to run the course. From the end of heavens he emanates, and his circuit is to their end. Recognized as a great traveler in the heavens, soaring to immense heights at its apogee, and then coming down, bowing unto the heaven at its perigee, the planet was depicted as a winged globe.